Good morning and welcome back to Mobility Matters. I'm your host, Javier Betancourt, Executive Director of the Citizens Independent Transportation Trust, or CITT. We're the agency of Miami-Dade County charged with overseeing your half-penny sales tax for transportation. So on our program, of course, we like to talk about transportation and mobility, but equally important is to talk about those issue areas that intersect with transportation and mobility, which is really everything. So at the end of the day, transportation connects everything. So today we have a great guest who's going to talk about the intersection of mobility with economic development and growing Miami's business climate and attracting businesses and investment to Miami. So welcome to the program, Rodrick.
Thanks for having me. So glad to be here.
No, thanks. And again, Rodrick Miller, I should have said, CEO and President of the Beacon Council. So the Beacon Council, what is that for those who aren't aware of it?
So Beacon Council is the public-private partnership charged with growing the economy for Miami-Dade. We try to grow the economy by bringing new jobs and investment here. Last year, we brought 5,700 new jobs to Miami, direct jobs, and 15,000 overall jobs to Miami-Dade County with an average wage of about $100,000 a year. So it's our job to grow the economy in a way that's sustainable, where things work the way that they're supposed to work, that inclusive, no matter where you live or what you look like, you can participate and fully participate in a way that's competitive. So we want to focus on things that fundamentally make the economy better tomorrow than it is today.
That's great. And judging by all the growth in Miami, you're doing a great job of it. So
yeah,
keep it up.
This is an exciting market. We've got lots of dynamism and the best is yet to come.
And so I know this is an exciting market, but you actually have a pretty fascinating background. You've been here now, what, a little over a year?
Yeah, just February 13th made a year, so just over a year.
And prior to this, you were, as I recall, with Invest Puerto Rico, and then you've worked for several other economic development agencies in various cities around the country. So talk to us a little bit about your background and where you've been.
Yeah, I say that I had the best job in the world, and I do because, I get to push and pull on the economy in a way that, really impacts people's lives. So I've been doing this work for about 20 years. And
you started when you were 10? I mean, how did that work
That's
out?
exactly right. That's exactly right. I was 10 years old when I got started. But I've been doing it for a little over 20 years. And what got me is, I grew up as a military brat, went to 17 schools between kindergarten and high school. But one of the places where we lived was West Germany, and I was there when the wall came down. And I just remember seeing the young people coming from Eastern Germany and Eastern Europe and kind of the struggles that they had. And then later we lived on the border of El Paso, Texas, and I saw kind of the struggles of immigrant communities. And throughout all of this, I tried to understand what was the relationship between corporate prosperity and individual prosperity, and made some false assumptions, and then so was able to go to school and really focus on economic stuff. I studied international business in undergrad, did a master's in finance and a master's in policy. But when I fell into economic development, it was like the best thing since sliced bread. So I've done this work now in Phoenix, Arizona. Was there for about 6 years. Did it in Louisiana and in New Orleans. I set up the economic development a few years after Hurricane Katrina. And then in Detroit, pre-bankruptcy, during the bankruptcy and post-bankruptcy, led the economic development agency for the city of Detroit. And then Puerto Rico for 4 years before coming here. So I've done this in a variety of environments and really enjoy it.
All fascinating places, and I'm sure all those experiences are coming to bear in what you're doing here, right? So, and by the way, you're a humble man. So you said you studied, but okay, you went to Harvard.
Yes.
You got your master's of public policy there.
Yeah.
You were a Fulbright scholar at is it Monterrey University in Mexico? Is that where you learned your Spanish, or is that part of kind of just growing up in the military?
So I studied abroad in Mexico in undergrad at La Autónoma de Guadalajara in central Mexico.
Okay.
And that's where I learned. And then I studied law for a year in Spain at the University of Seville, and that was before doing the master's in finance as a Fulbright. Yeah.
And then, of course, you hone those skills in Puerto Rico, I imagine.
Exactly. Something like that.
In Miami, we kind of speak Spanish, right? We speak a little bit, more Spanglish here than anything else.
No, it's been fun learning all of the Miami Spanish sayings. The Miami El Sabor. You got to love it, and that's one of the things that we've loved about this community. That my kids all speak Spanish after having lived in Puerto Rico and speak it fairly well, and they're able to continue to soak up that culture and that language here.
How old are your kids?
They range from 3 to 17.
Oh,
3,
wow.
10, 12, and 17.
Wow.
2 girls and 2 boys.
Wow, what a great experience, man.
Yeah.
And they like it here? Everyone's adjusting well?
They don't like it. They love it.
They love it. Good,
they
good.
love
That's
it
what I
here.
wanted.
You know, it's fascinating. My 10-year-old, she had said to us when we were leaving Puerto Rico, she was like, "I've spent half of my life here, and you guys are pulling me away," and she was so sad. And so we said, "Well," we were talking the other week. We said, "Well, maybe we'll go back for spring break." She said, "Why?" So that's how my family's taken to Miami. It's been a real blessing.
We won't talk about spring break in Miami right now. It's a sensitive topic. It's a whole nother program.
Absolutely.
So the Beacon Council, you're attracting businesses and attracting investment and jobs ultimately to our community. And I imagine that one of the things that you need to talk about with these businesses or that they ask you about is our transportation system and how people get around, not just people, but goods and freight, right? Absolutely. So, how does what you do intersect with that subject matter? And what is it you say to businesses when they ask you about our transportation system? And maybe, I'm sure there's a reputation out there about our traffic and about our driving culture, which is rather unique. So when you get those questions or when you're promoting the city, what is it you say about transportation and mobility?
So I think one of the big things that I talk about in terms of this of the Miami region is that this is a young community and it's got a young infrastructure and it's really developing, but it's also a very ambitious community. And so from a commercial perspective, I can talk about the reality that we've got 95 and a bunch of other highways. We've got pretty decent highway infrastructure, right. And that's really, really powerful in terms of us being a connector. And then we've got, of course, one of the busiest ports and one of the busiest airports in the world. So
huge assets.
Huge assets. So we've got a really great trade and logistics infrastructure, and that's really the core of our economy. 1 in 4 jobs in Miami-Dade are in the trade and logistics sector.
That many?
Yeah. And so, you think about it, American Airlines, which shout out to them, J.C. Lascano chairs our board, who heads American Airlines here. They've got, 13,000, 14,000 employees, something like that here. So we've got a huge trade and logistics and transportation infrastructure on the commercial side. And so that's one of the big strengths of our community. Right. On the side of how people live in terms of transit, we do have some traffic challenges, but part of the story is that the reason why we have those traffic challenges is because this market is experiencing incredible economic growth.
Victim of our own success.
We're a victim of our own success, and I've seen very aggressive plans to reinvest in our transit infrastructure, and I think that's going to be absolutely vital. And so what I talk to businesses about is that not only that do we have this great commercial infrastructure, we've got a decent infrastructure for how people live their lives, but there's a commitment to long-term investment in it. Right. And not only is there commitment to long-term investment in it, that there is a recognition that for where Miami is playing now, we're competing with the most dynamic cities in the world. So we've got to have an infrastructure that matches that. And so we know that we've got to make those investments in transit. We know we've got to make it in water and sewerage and just the types of things that a world-class city like us should have.
And to your point, the commitment is there, and the way to show your commitment is to put your money where your mouth is, right? And so the half-penny sales tax, which was approved by voters 20 years ago now, has been funding a lot of those transportation improvements and will continue to do so. So I do think that we are committed to those improvements. Yeah, but it takes time. Right?
It takes time, and it also takes usage. I take public transit every day.
Shout out, by the way, you came to this interview. Or this program on transit, right? You took the Metro Rail down and even walked from the station to the studios?
Yeah, it's about a half-mile walk,
So you do this regularly?
I do this every day.
That's great.
If there is a way to get to my appointments via public transit, I do it, because if people don't use it, then the investment is a waste of money.
Right.
If people don't use it, the environmental impacts are going to continue to be the same. And I'm like, if I can do it, I know others can do it. I'm new to this community, so I get lost regularly, but I've enjoyed the journey.
Right. And so in order to use that regularly, I'm just curious as to where you live, because it has to be somewhat.
I live in Coconut Grove.
Coconut Grove. Okay.
I live in Coconut Grove.
So well situated. You have Coconut Grove Metro Rail Station there.
Exactly,
you can hop on that to work. And
that's
back.
Exactly right.
So you take it to work even?
I take it to work every day.
That's great.
Yeah.
And you guys, I know, are in Brickell still, right?
Yeah, we're in Brickell. So
good.
Yeah. So we're the infrastructure that we have. Those of us that can use it, we really should try to figure out how to tap into it, because I think as people see, as government leaders need cover to make decisions.
Sure.
They need to be able to show that it's an investment that's worthwhile. And I don't know that case has been made by the way we've used it to date.
Right. Now, are you familiar with the plans for expansion, and do you discuss those, so the SMART plan and all
Absolutely.
the quarters? So I'm curious, and I hate to put you in the hot seat, but so if you had a magic wand and you could make one thing happen, whether it's one of those smart plan corridors or maybe some other transportation initiative, what would it be? What would be the most helpful to you and what you do in promoting Miami and trying to attract businesses from a transportation, either policy or infrastructure standpoint?
I mean, I do think from a smart plan is I don't want to say I won't say a particular spur because that's not,
they're all important, right?
Because they're all important. But I think the progress in terms of making those investments in rail, they have to happen, and they have to happen soon. Because we know that, with housing affordability issues, the places along the transit right now are probably some of the most expensive areas in the county to live.
Yeah.
So in order for us to really, make accessibility a real thing, we've got to figure out how to get it to where people can live and where there's affordable housing as well.
Okay. Now, we talked about your children just a little bit, and then we talked about, how young Miami is. You have a great kind of analogy or metaphor that we were talking about before the program about your race that you had with your son, right?
Yeah. So my 16-year-old kid, about a year and a half ago, Christmas, he challenges me to a race. And of course, in my mind, there's not a scenario where this kid's going to beat me. I brought him into this world. I'll take him out, as the old people would say, And so,
were you a runner or are a runner?
Not a runner, but I've always been athletic and involved in athletics. So I said, I will do the run. And we started the race. For the first third of the race, we were kind of neck and neck. And then it was like he said, "Dad, are you even running?" And just took off.
Afterburners on.
Yeah, and for me, it was interesting. I watched him take off, and I said, "Let me stop because I don't want the gap to be recorded via video." That said, though, when I thought about it, I called my sister first. My sister, she's 3 years younger than me, and I said, "Sis, Jordan and I were racing today. You're not going to believe who won." She said, "I hope he won." I said, "Why would you say such a thing?" She says, "Because he's a 16-year-old kid and you're a middle-aged man." And I said, "Okay, you bumped your head." So I called my father. I said, "Dad, Jordan and I raced today." And he said, "What were you doing racing with Jordan? You're lucky you're not hurt." And I think about Miami in terms of that analogy. Miami is a place that, when you look at it, South Florida is only about 130 years old. Mm-hmm. And when you look at most of the economic growth of Miami, it's really happened in the last 60, 65 years since the Cuban migration, some of the other things have happened. And so when you're looking at us economies as competition, the Chicagos and the New Yorks of the world, those are hundreds of years old. They've got very established systems, very established processes, which give them some advantages. But the flip side of that is that they're kind of old and curmudgeon-y, and they're
hard to adapt.
They're crutchety. Yeah. They're hard to get in, and they've got established systems. Here, someone can come in and be here a year or two. Like me, I've been here less than a year, but I've been able to really get ingrained in this community, been accepted by this community, and I feel like we can have impact. And I think that's part of the value of Miami. And we've got to figure out how do we tell that story more effectively, not just nationally, but locally as well.
Okay. So, and Beacon Council is really kind of the tip of that spear, right? Because, you're so forward-looking, and there's nothing like trying to attract a business which is looking at various communities to kind of sharpen that spear and say, hey, these are the issues that are holding us back and that we need to focus on. And I know that transportation is one of them. Yeah. But there are other areas you're looking at. And I understand that there's an initiative called Opportunity Miami that's kind of under the Beacon Council umbrella. Yeah. Talk to us about Opportunity Miami and some of the other issue areas that you're kind of looking to invest in. And,
I mean, so it's great. So we've got we just rolled out our strategic plan maybe about 3 months ago, and the strategic plan was kind of the plan for our work over the next 3 to 5 years. And the strategic plan, the Beacon Council historically has focused on economic growth. Right. We got to grow the economy. Last year we did 51 deals. Of the 51 deals we did last year, 27 of the companies were companies that were in Miami. 27 of the companies were companies that were from outside of Miami, outside of Florida, and 24 of the deals were companies that were already here. Right. And
because it's not just about attracting, it's about retaining.
It's about retaining and
growing.
Yeah. So I like that mix of roughly 50-50 in terms of what we do locally and what we do kind of globally. Mm-hmm. But the strategic plan said we don't want to just grow, we want to grow smart. We want to grow sustainable, inclusive, and competitive. So the five pillars of that, the first one is continue to grow the economy. But we want to be smarter about it. So we're trying to be more surgical about what sectors we go after. Sectors that we're focused on are things like aviation, trade and logistics, life sciences and healthcare, financial services, and tech, right? But how are we more decisive about what companies we want? Retention and expansion, 80% of an economy's growth comes from existing companies.
Wow.
So right now we meet with about 200 companies a year. Our goal is to double that to 400 to 500 companies a year in the next 3 years in terms of local companies we support. So continue to grow the economy. And then most likely, we'll start to open offices of the Beacon Council in other markets as our budget allows. Because I think, to really fuel this growth, there are places like Chicago, New York, Brazil, other markets where we've got such a good flow of projects that having somebody on the ground would help. So that's kind of the first pillar, continue to grow the economy. The second pillar of it is to really tell our story. We've got a great story to tell. We did a perception survey of 300 CEOs and site selectors, and they basically said Miami wasn't top of mind for them for expanded investment. So we're trying to figure out how do we tell that story both locally and nationally of why we're the best place to invest in the world.
Right.
And then
people still have kind of an outdated idea of what Miami is.
1980s Miami Vice.
So much.
1980s Miami Vice.
Absolutely.
And that's very glamorous in some respects. It's just not in touch with the reality or the business climate that's here.
Right. They don't see this. They still see kind of Ocean Drive with
That's
the
exactly
neon lights,
right.
right?
That's exactly right. And I mean, one of the things that I love about this place is I always have thought of myself as a bohemian kind of guy, and said,
That's why you ended up in the Grove. I love it.
That's exactly right. And there was a lifestyle that I envisioned perhaps in a New York City. And I feel like I've got a lifestyle that's 10 times better than that here, because it's not only a place that has, all of the arts and culture that you expect from a global city. It's got great weather, and it's family friendly. And there are very few places in the world, I think, that can offer that balance. So telling our story. So the third pillar of our plan is talent. Focus on talent. It's all about the number one thing that companies are looking for is access to people that want to work and that have a good work ethic and good skills. Right. And so we're trying to figure out how do we attract more talent here, how do we retain the talent that we have, and how do we grow the talent. And then the fourth.
So working closely, I'm sure, with the school system, with the universities.
Absolutely. So we run something called the Academic Leaders Council. Okay. And the Academic Leaders Council is really, it's the presidents of the major universities here. It's FMU.
And we have a wealth of universities right here.
Yeah, and
I don't think we appreciate that sometimes. We take it for granted.
That's one of our most important assets. I mean, it's the creator of talent. It's the interface for companies to do research and investigations and that kind of stuff. So it's a really powerful tool. And so we work with the academic leaders of the universities. Superintendent Dotris is part of that. It's chaired by Madeline Pumariega from Miami-Dade College. So we work closely with them. We actually just released a report about a week and a half ago that future talent goals, which set a goal that by 2040, 65% of our population would have at least an associate's degree, and working with the university leaders to do that. That's the kind of stuff that's at the essence of our work. While tactically, it's how do I help this company move here or help this company be successful? Strategically, it's about how do we create the environment. And so the fourth pillar, shaping the future, which is really where Opportunity Miami lies, is all about the future. Opportunity Miami is our future-focused arm. And shout out to Matt Hagman, who recently left us to go to a national organization.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, he recently
Matt,
left.
we're going to miss you.
Yeah, we missed him already. But he really got that going, and it's become an incredible platform to bring business leaders and community together to talk about these pillars of resiliency, climate resiliency, to talk about workforce and talent, and to talk about entrepreneurship, all with an inclusive lens. So that's really the essence of our strategy. And then all of that's undergirded by good data and research. What gets measured gets done. So we've taken an approach that we've got to measure everything. We've got to really be strategic and clearly define what success looks like. And I will tell you, the Beacon Council cannot do it alone. We can only do it, there's no one politician or organization that can do this. It has to be a concerted effort that brings together the public, business, and civic leadership and political leadership all rowing in the same direction.
And the great thing about the Beacon Council is the structure itself kind of ensures that, right? So you have many of these critical institutions represented on your board of directors. So who are some of or board members or institutions that they represent?
Yeah. So our board is chaired by J.C. Lascano, who heads up American Airlines here in Miami. The chair-elect is a lady named Christine Barney, the RBB Communications. Our immediate past chair was Yolanda Cash-Jackson, who's with the firm of Becker Polyakov. She's a lobbyist. And so those are some of the people. But we've got organizations like the Chamber of Commerce that are represented on our board. The Miami Chamber of Commerce, the Greater Miami Chamber of Commerce, the South Dade Chamber.
Miami Beach, Miami-Dade, Coral Gables.
We got the Hispanic Chamber. So we've got all the chambers. We've got the Convention and Visitors Bureau. We've got the 8 largest municipalities in Miami-Dade are all on our board. So we really try to bring together this public-private nonprofit mix that's needed to actually do the work. I often say we're like a toothless tiger. People are like, oh, the Beacon Council, it's got this great big mission and hairy stuff, but we don't control incentives. We don't control land. We don't really control policy. We're just a sales team. We don't, and so what we have to do,
a connector, right?
And a connector. So what we have to do is really paint a persuasive vision, and bring those people and those organizations to the table that actually have the tools to execute to figure out how to get deals over the hump.
So you mentioned incentives, and so for those who haven't really worked in this world, what are some of those economic development incentives that we use to retain, grow, and attract?
So interestingly enough, incentives are very interesting things, and people have all kinds of takes on them, like do you need them or do you not need them? I would tell you at the core of it, the reason why an incentive exists is to offset the competitive disadvantage of a marketplace. So that means that you've got labor that's off, or you've got infrastructure that's off, or you've got some problem that's off kilter and is making you uncompetitive. And so you need
housing prices.
Or housing prices. So you need some sort of incentive to say, we're going to make up for that differential. In theory, it never really happens like this, but in theory, what should be happening is as you assess those competitive disadvantages, there's smart public policy being happening to directly address that. And so, for example, in our case, we see that there's thoughtful stuff being given to transit, right? That's top of mind. Affordable housing's top of mind, infrastructure. So from an incentives perspective, you really do need them to offset that. But the other reason why you need them is because other markets have them, and if you don't have them, you're lost. That said, an incentive is only valuable at the last step of the deal.
Because the cherry on top, right?
It's the cherry on top because, quite frankly, if your market isn't a good market, it's not a good market, and no incentive is going to make up for that. And so once companies get down to 3 to 5 places that they're looking at, that they're considering, that's when the incentives really count. And unfortunately, Florida is probably the weakest state, one of the weakest states as it relates to incentives, and definitely the weakest in the Southeast. So we've got very limited incentives here, which has really forced us to be much more creative. That said, there was a retention incentive that was created maybe about a year ago. Even working with Kaseya, we did 3,400 jobs with them last year that the county's providing, so we've got that incentive. And we've got some limited tools at the state level. But quite frankly, we're having to be much more creative and aggressive about ways to figure out how to fill that gap.
So, obviously there are several factors and variables that go into a business's decision to move here. And let's stick with attraction for a second. What would you say is the top kind of issue that is attracting people to Miami at this juncture? I mean, obviously the pandemic, I think, changed the nature of economic development to some extent, right? Certainly being in a state that's very open, and less regulatory, I think, is something that a lot of businesses sought at that time. I don't know if that's continuing, but what would you say is kind of our top competitive advantage at this particular moment?
So I think one of them is, I think one of those competitive advantages is that we've got momentum. So people have seen Ken Griffith with Citadel move here. They're seeing, Jeff.
Money follows money, right?
Money follows money. They see Jeff Bezos has moved here. There have been literally hundreds of financial services companies that have moved here since the pandemic. So that momentum kind of creates additional momentum, and people are discovering it. That said, our low tax environment, of course, is one of the top things. If it weren't for that low tax environment, without the incentives, we'd be dead in the water. And so the low tax environment really does serve as a significant offset for the lack of incentives. The number one challenge that we're hearing, of course, is the issue of affordable housing. And so we've got to really figure out how do we tackle the affordable housing issue. And then the number 2 one right after that is talent. Companies are asking, does Miami have the talent? But we've been fairly successful in working with the academic leaders and others to show that we can produce when required.
Wow. And so Jeff Bezos. Okay. So have you had any conversations with Jeff about, hey, it's great that you're living here.
I'm
let's
trying.
bring some of the business here.
If anybody wants to make that introduction, I'm more than glad to receive it. No, I've not fortunately had a chance to meet with them yet, but I'm working on trying to get a meeting with them because I do. Amazon does have a significant presence here, but I think that there's a lot more that they can do. They can be involved in here, and I'd love to figure out how to make that happen.
And obviously, he has ties to the community. Went
Absolutely.
to high school here. His family's here now. He's here, and so you would hope that at some point the business. And by the way, I found economic development director of the city of Coral Gables for a few years, and one of the things I found is that the business and jobs often do follow the CEO. Right,
That's
the
right.
CEO kind of moves, and then. Yeah, at some point, thereafter, hopefully at least some of the business follows.
I mean, finding the people that have second homes here is a great strategy that we try to employ because we're like, if they've got a second home here and they're a CEO or CFO or in one of those critical positions at a company, that oftentimes that can be a very good hook for us to go in.
I think even Ken Griffin, had lived here before.
Absolutely.
He moved the business.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, living here is to love it, right?
Living here is to love it. And what's interesting though, you mentioned that Jeff Bezos went to school here, Ketanji Jackson Brown went to school here, so many others. It's interesting. Miami-Dade school system gets a really bad rap, but as someone coming from the outside in, I would tell you there are a lot of good options in Miami-Dade's public school system and charter school system, and so one of the things that we're trying to do is figure out how do we make sure that we can work with Superintendent Dotris to get out the message about all of the things that they have going on there as well.
That's great. So, it's so critically important. But again, it's just one piece of a larger puzzle, and there's so many pieces to it.
That's right.
So you're a puzzle maker, huh?
Oh, it's fun. It's fun. It's so much fun.
So speaking of fun, I saw that you have a couple of interests. One is reading, and another is playing the piano. So tell us about the piano, because I love music, and I'm an aspiring musician, just never had the patience to actually learn anything.
Oh, so I love it.
How did you learn to play the piano, and how often do you play, and do you do gigs? Like, what's the deal?
I don't play enough anymore, but I used to play quite a bit, So I was a military brat, but my dad was also a pastor. Okay. So I grew up playing piano in church, and then went to college and was a voice minor and played piano in college. And that was kind of how I always, had like a church gig, maybe like playing with the band, do funerals, weddings, it's been just a love of mine. And then I play a variety of other instruments. I was a band kid, so, I was a low brass guy. So I played baritone, trombone, played timpani as a percussionist, so just love music. It's kind of in the blood.
Any particular genre you care for, jazz?
I play a little bit of everything. I mean, I do play jazz, a lot of easy listening type stuff, of course.
Oh man, you must have loved New Orleans.
Yeah, I love New Orleans. I played in a funk band when I was in New Orleans,
cool.
So it was a good experience. Yeah, I try to play as much as I can.
Okay, and then in terms of reading, let's see, what are you reading now? Let's start.
It's interesting. I wish I had
if you
time.
Can find the time. I was going to say.
I said I wish. Yeah, I was going to say I wish I had the time to read a lot more. When I was younger, I didn't. Because you're youthful and you're arrogant, right? I didn't believe in reading works of fiction, because I was just like, it's a waste of time. Like, why would you do that? Now, as I'm older, I really appreciate good fiction. Right. And my favorite genre is historical fiction, because it's a great story, but you also learn some history. That's exactly right. And I've been reading a lot of stuff set in the Middle East as of late. I'm just fascinated with the culture, and of course with the geopolitics that are going on. It's been wild. Yeah.
Okay, now this is a tough one.
Yeah.
What is your favorite book of all time? If you had to take one and continue to read it over and over again.
The Poisonwood Bible.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
The Poisonwood Bible. Are you familiar?
No, I'm not actually.
The Poisonwood Bible. I read it in high school, and it's one of those books that, I go back and I visit it. Barbara Kingsolver is the author. I've read it time and time again, and it's just a fascinating read. It's about a family that are missionaries overseas, and the daughter gets malaria. It's just a great read.
Nonfiction?
It's a fiction.
Oh, this was fiction. Okay.
It's a fiction. And one of the things that the reasons why I enjoy these kinds of stories is the most powerful thing that exists is humanity. And so people are like, why do you do economic development? I'm like, it's all about people. The idea of the American dream, an honest day's pay for an honest day's work. The books that I read tell the story of life isn't always pretty, but the human spirit is just undying. And one of the things I found fascinating about Miami is I've heard more stories of people who have come from awful situations around the globe, and found hope in this community and built an exciting life for themselves. And so that's why I like to read nonfiction, but that's also why I think Miami is very special, because anybody can come here from anywhere in the world and make this place their home.
I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
I mean, Miami is unique in so many ways, but I think you hit the nail on the head. That's what makes it special.
Yeah.
Right. Unique and special. And listen, we are so proud to now count you as a member of our community. I think you've hit the ground running. Everyone I've met has nothing but amazing things to say about you, and I could see why.
Oh, thank you.
So thank you for what you're doing, and keep up the great work. And please come on back to the program whenever you like.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks
This has been a pleasure.
On the program.
Anytime.
Folks, and by the way, I should say, if people want to learn more about the Beacon Council, where should they go?
Check out next.beaconcouncil.com. Next.beaconcouncil.com. No www. And we also have a very active body of work on social media, both on Instagram as well as LinkedIn.
Great. And if you're interested in learning more about the CITT and what we do, you can visit our website at miamidade.gov/CITT. We are looking for members of the community to join our volunteer transportation trust. So if you're interested in being a member of our board of trustees, please fill out an application. And we're always looking for CITT ambassadors. So if you ride the transit system on a regular basis and want to be a part of improving the service and telling its story, please apply to be a CITT ambassador, both on our website, miamidade.gov/CITT. So once again, thank you, Rodrick, for being on the program and for everything you do. Thank you to Community Newspapers for hosting us here in their beautiful studios. And thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you again in a couple of weeks.